Good afternoon, everyone. Day 5, afternoon. This afternoon we're going to start to have a look at the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the centerpiece of the Buddhist teaching. It's said that the Four Noble Truths holds all the teachings of the Buddha together. This afternoon we're going to have a look at the first Noble Truth, the Noble Truth of Dukkha. I've been saying that word a bit this week. Dukkha. What is dukkha? We get a definition of dukkha given to us in the satipatthana text, our meditation text. It's in the 4th section, Dhamma Nupassana, contemplation of Dhamma. There we have a definition. The Buddha asks, what is dukkha? Birth is dukkha, old age is dukkha, sickness is dukkha, death is dukkha. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair. Association with disliked things is dukkha. Separation from liked things, dukkha. Not getting what one wants, dukkha. It seems pretty much everything is dukkha. Well, it is, if you cling to it. And there, right at the end, the summary. In short, the 5 aggregates affected by clinging are dukkha. We're going to be having a look at the 5 aggregates. This is a little summary the Buddha gives us. Dukkha is normally translated into English as suffering. Some translators have tried unsatisfactoriness, some have tried stress, pain. The original meaning of the word is pain. The Buddha took a word that was in general use in northern India in the 5th century BC, dukkha. He took it as the centerpiece of his teaching. And he claimed there is dukkha. Or should we say, he exclaimed, there is dukkha. Dukkha in our modern world includes all kinds of mental disorder, depressions and stresses, worries and anxieties, disorders and illnesses. Where the Buddha's teaching has come to be established in those countries and societies, they generally don't translate the word. They just accept it, adopt it rather. Dukkha. In Thai, well, they shorten it a little bit. Tuk. Tuk, suffering, pain. There are various types of dukkha throughout the Buddha's teaching. First of all, there's dukkha vedana, and we had a look at that already. That's unpleasant feeling, dukkha vedana, or pain. It's the regular pain that's arising in the body when we start to sit for too long. And also mental suffering. Sometimes mental suffering has a special word, domanassa, but that's also included in this type of dukkha, dukkha vedana. Then there's sankhara dukkha. Sankhara means formations or conditioned things, conditional formations, if you like. The pain of the conditional formations, the pain of conditioned reality, this mind and body process. That's the dukkha that's cured, that we constantly cure moment after moment by moving this body around, by changing the posture, continuously curing the unpleasantness that's arising. The unpleasantness from actually having a body. Excuse me. The third type of dukkha is dukkha lakkhana. Lakkhana means a characteristic of dukkha. This is the experience of insight. When we practice our Vipassana meditation and we come to understand the nature of dukkha, we penetrate dukkha lakkhana, the characteristic of dukkha. And finally, what we're talking about today, dukkha satcha. Satcha means truth, the noble truth, ariya satcha, the noble truth of suffering. And that is the first noble truth that the Buddha is talking about. This is the inherent suffering that arises when we grasp, when we hold on to something. It's the conditioned suffering that is activated by taking things as this is mine, this I am, this is myself. It's the fact that this nama rupa and consciousness process is clinging to itself and creating a sense of me in every moment. That's the dukkha that the Buddha was pointing to. That's the dukkha that he really wanted us to penetrate and understand. The inherent unsatisfactoriness of everything that is conditioned by a sense of self or subjectivity. It's the inability for the mind and body process to provide any lasting satisfaction as it's being clung to. In the Pali text, and as in our satipatthana text, the Buddha uses several systems in trying to convey this understanding of dukkha. Specifically, he wants us to penetrate and understand the nature of dukkha for ourselves. For it's only through our own understanding that we can free ourselves. The two primary schemes that he uses are known as the 6 sense bases and the 5 aggregates. Cha ayatana. Ayatana means a base, or it actually means a sphere. Sometimes we use the term a door. The 5 aggregates, we'll speak about in a short moment. That's the summary the Buddha gives us. Pancha upadana kanda, the 5 aggregates affected by clinging. 5 aggregates affected by clinging is dukkha. It's also possible to have the 5 aggregates not affected by clinging. That's the experience of an enlightened being, where clinging and attachment has been removed. That upadana is not arising within the 5 aggregates. An enlightened being still has the 5 aggregates. They're just not producing a sense of self. They're free from that. They're free from dukkha. They've achieved liberation from the round of dukkha. We'll have a look at the 6 sense bases first. The Buddha uses the 6 sense bases as a means of communicating how we should observe this mind and body process. He says suffering arises through these 6 pairs of bases. There's the internal base and the external base. The internal base is something like the eye, visible forms being the external. Ear and sounds, nose and odors, tongue and tastes, the body and sensations or touches, and the mind and its ideas and its opinions and its views and its thoughts, memories, plans, and the rest of it. The Buddha tells us that these 6 sense bases are impermanent. He says what is impermanent, that is suffering. What is suffering, that is non-self. We're labouring under the false premise or the misbelief that these internal bases belong to me and that the objects are for me. You have this dichotomy going on, this duality we're experience. We live in a dual world where there's a me and stuff for me. And that's constantly being updated in the present moment. When we have ignorance and craving is allowed to arise at one of those sense bases, and that sense base is taken as me or mine. When this is done continuously, me, mine, mind, me, it creates a sense of I. There's a concreteness that arises. It starts to crystallize. It becomes so continuous that this very temporary thought of me in mind, over the long term, starts to produce an I, starts to produce a personality, starts to produce a sense of self. The organism, this thing here, really does believe that it is somebody. It can't conceive of an experience outside of things happening to me. Pleasure and pain are always happening to me. Sights and sounds are always things that I see and I hear. We subjectify everything, and so we live in a duality. The Buddha was not particularly concerned with delivering a full philosophical system, although he does very well in doing so. He was much more interested in giving a practical route. He wants us to see things for ourselves, rather than trying to disclose all the nature of reality. He discloses just enough for us to do the work for ourselves. In fact, he's once sitting in the forest with the monks and he picks up a handful of leaves. He says, "Monks, what is more? The leaves in my hand or the leaves in this great forest?" "Oh, Venerable Sir, the leaves in this great forest are vast, while the leaves in your hands are just few." And then the Buddha says, "So too, what I have come to know is vast and great. What I am teaching you is just this, just dukkha and the cessation of dukkha." He really wants us to understand and see things for ourselves. He wants us to understand that consciousness is arising at these 6 sense bases. He wants us to observe the knowing, see it clearly and not subjectify it. He calls these sense bases the all. He says this is all there is. And it's true. When you think about it, when you experience it in your meditation practice, all our information is coming through these 6 holes, these 6 bases. We just process it and subjectify it, turn it into a me and a mine. He says the all is subject to birth, aging, sickness and death. Sometimes he calls the 6 sense bases the world. He says, "Monks, this is the world." These 6 bases. He says the world is empty of self and what belongs to self. We need to see this mind and body process through the 6 sense bases as empty of self. We need to enter that void experience. He also calls the 6 internal bases old karma. It's the manifestation of old intentions. We all have a vast amount of old karma. Things, wholesome things, unwholesome things that we have generated. Most of that old karma or old volitional intentions remains latent. It hasn't yet given its fruit. We all have a vast store of that potentiality. Just like in a mango seed. We can get a mango seed, we can cut it open, there's no mango tree in there. But a mango seed has a potentiality. It could possibly grow if the conditions are right. And so it is with this vast store of unmanifested karmic intention. Once the conditions are in place, it has a chance to manifest. We'll talk more about that as the days go on. He also calls these 6 sense bases of conceivings, of papancha, craving, conceit, and views. When we take things as being mine, that's craving. When we take things as being I, that's conceit. When we take things as being a self, that's a view. These 3 types of subjectivity, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. These 3 doorways of papancha, or conceptual proliferation, arise at the 6 sense bases. Observing these arising leads to the abandoning of wrong view, identity view, and the view of self. The 6 sense bases give us access to the world and the agreeable and disagreeable objects in that world. It also leads to our spontaneous impulsive reactions and responses. We create new intentions based on the information that's delivered to us through these 6 sense doors. We create new karma. In the dependent origination, we have nama rupa paccaya salayatanam. With mind and matter as condition, the 6 sense bases come to be. Salayatana paccaya passa. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact takes place in the present moment. Consciousness is arising at the 6 sense bases. If that consciousness has been infected by ignorance, then it'll be a subjectified consciousness that arises at that point of contact, at that passa. We can call these 6 sense doors the doorways to infection, if you like. That's where the virus of selfhood sneaks in. This is where we have to observe. This is where our meditation practice takes place, in the present moment. Observing at these 6 sense doors, observing the consciousness that arises at these 6 sense bases, so that we can note and know, so that we can neutralize the data in that present moment. When we neutralize the data in that present moment with wisdom, when we create space around that present moment experience, craving doesn't have a chance to infiltrate. Craving for being doesn't have an opportunity to sneak in and take the experience in the moment as mine. When we become skillful in observing the sense bases in this fashion continuously, and our samadhi builds up so that we become stable in our operation, then we start to experience some freedom from the subjectivity of the sense bases. The sense bases don't disappear. Sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch still arise. They just arise without subjectivity. The enlightened ones, the Buddha and the nuns and the monks at that time, even today, those who have done the practice, those noble members of the Sangha, they still have the 6 sense bases. They still have to experience life. They still experience the manifesting of old karmic intentions at the sense bases. It's just that the root that causes trouble has been removed. Greed, hatred, and delusion doesn't arise in that particular moment. There's a beautiful sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's addressed to a man named Malunkyaputta. the son of Malunkia. He appears in the Pali text a few times. He was a wanderer at that time, kind of a meditating wanderer, if you like, philosopher, ascetic. He wasn't yet a monk, but he was pretty keen on testing the Buddha. We came to see him and asked a few questions here and there. Eventually he comes to the Buddha and said, I've been asking you, Venerable Sir, quite a lot. I just want to do the practice. How do I do it? Give it to me quick. I don't have so much time. I'm getting old. Give me a summary of the teaching. And then the Buddha says this to him. Well, when Malunkia Putta, regarding things seen, heard, sensed and cognized by you, in the seen there will be merely the seen. In the heard, there will be merely the heard. In the sensed, there will be merely the sensed. And in the cognized, there will be merely the cognized. When you're able to do this, Malunkia Putta, you will not be by that. When you are not by that, you will not be therein. When you are not therein, you will be neither here, nor beyond, nor between the two. This itself is the end of dukkha. The Buddha's telling Malunkia Putta in this passage to just have a look at what's there. Don't add anything to it. Sometimes that's called bare attention in English. Whatever's seen, heard, sensed. Sensed is 3 doors: nose, tongue and body. Whatever is cognized through the mind. If you see them clearly, just merely, you will not be by that. There is no being arising by that. You will not be therein. You'll be neither here, nor beyond, nor between the two. There's no being arising when you see things clearly. Just this is the end of suffering. A wonderful passage. The Buddha also calls these 6 sense bases baited hooks, like bait when you go fishing. Tantalizing and delightful. In fact, he says the objects of the sense bases, those things agreeable and likable, those things provocative of lust, those sensual pleasures, those objects which we find delightful and agreeable, that's what keeps us stuck. When we don't know how to observe things clearly, our only way of escape from dukkha is to enjoy some sensuality. It's the only thing that makes life kind of meaningful. Otherwise, what else are we doing here? It's going to be sitting around having dukkha all day. Yeah. We need something. If we can't meditate, then you have to go to the fridge and have a snack, or put on the iPod, or enjoy yourself with YouTube, or whatever it is that you do. Go into the jungle, go wandering through the streets, or whatever it is that you like to do to enjoy and delight in those objects of the senses. We all have our favorite objects to distract us with. Distract us from what? Distract us from the dukkha that is omnipresent and everywhere. We need to practice with sense restraint. On seeing a form with the eye, do not grasp at its signs and its features. For if we grasp at its signs and its features, evil, unwholesome thoughts of covetousness and grief may invade your mind and remain. Practice the way of restraint. Guard the sense faculties. Protect the sense faculties. We need to do it with the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and even the mind. We can't just allow the sense bases to be off the leash all day, running around, and then for 20 minutes at night bring it and expect it just to sit down and be comfortable. Oh, it's on the loose. We need to practice with some restraint. When we practice with restraint throughout the day, our meditation practice is much more efficient, much more effective. The second scheme in which the Buddha likes to describe dukkha is given in the summary of the definition, the five aggregates. An aggregate is a combined thing, something that's being joined together. A group, if you like. The five groups. It's probably the most common way the Buddha teaches us to practice. There are five of these things that make up the human organism. We've been looking at them already. The first one is the body, consisting of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air. That's one part of our existence, this solid thing with its heat and its energy moving throughout it, and its cohesion, the trickling and cohesiveness that keeps solidity, heat, and movement all together in one thing. The second aggregate is feeling, pleasantness, unpleasantness, neutral feeling. The third aggregate is perception. That's how we recognize things. That's how we label things. That's how we make sense of the world. We all have a vast amount of sanya, as it's known in Pali. Sanya. We have a big filing cabinet. We've mostly seen almost everything, so that when we get a bit older, we can walk through life and we recognize the objects around us. When we're younger, perhaps we haven't seen all the things. It's like when we travel to a new country for the first time. There'll be some objects in that country we've never seen before, things that we can't recognize. What's that used for? New sanyas. The fourth aggregate is known as sankhara, or volitional formations, or conditional formations. That's the active part of our five aggregates. That's where the reactions take place. That's where liking and disliking takes place. It's also where subjectivity takes place, where we take things as, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. It's where all the emotional states start to arise, greed and anger and jealousy, and also love and compassion and patience. All those reactions to our feelings, perceptions, and body. The fifth aggregate is vijnana, or consciousness. As we've said, consciousness is just the knowing. It's the knowing that arises at the six sense bases. Consciousness and the other four aggregates can be called nama rupa. Rupa, of course, is the first aggregate. Nama is Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, feeling, perceptions, and thoughts. These five aggregates always arise together and cease together. Our experience is always one of the five aggregates, a combined combination. Unfortunately, these five aggregates get subjectified. The five aggregates end up not just as pancha kanda, but pancha upadana kanda. The five aggregates that have been affected by clinging, affected by attachment, affected by grasping, affected by attavada, or the view of self. The five aggregates are the Buddha's primary scheme of analyzing sentient existence. They are the ultimate referent of dukkha. The five aggregates are the domain of clinging and the causal origination of dukkha. The nature and being of existence is only our concern through our own experience. Getting to know the philosophical tenets of the teaching of the Buddha is interesting and useful. Ultimately, however, we have to experience these five aggregates for ourselves. And the only way for us to experience them is with our own mind in the present moment. Reading about them is useful. Listening to somebody talk about them is useful. Thinking about them is useful. Different types of knowledge can arise. Different levels of understanding can arise. But true freedom can only arise in your own contemplation, through experiencing them for yourself. We need to see the arising of the dukkha, the ceasing of the dukkha. We have to see the satisfaction that the five aggregates provide us. They are satisfying. The Buddha doesn't say your life is going to be continuously one huge misery. It's not. Evidently, there are good days, bad days. Sometimes we even have a good month. Sometimes we have a good year. This year was all right. Our life is full of pleasant and unpleasant experiences. All those pleasant and unpleasant experiences, if we haven't been noting and knowing, have been subjectified ones. Whether they're pleasant or unpleasant doesn't matter. They're all dukkha as far as the Buddha is concerned. It's all an unsatisfactory part of the matrix. It's still contained within the conditioned realm of nama rupa and consciousness arising and passing away. There will be pleasant times. You will fall in love. Beautiful experiences. It's also dukkha. You can enjoy the dukkha if you want to. Most of us try to make do with enjoying it in some way. It's just too unbearable to contemplate not enjoying sometimes. Life would be one huge, boring mess if we just walked around dukkha, 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 dukkha. We'd be seeing things clearly. I encourage you to look in that way. Dukkha is also a relative thing. It's only dukkha, it's only suffering because it's relative to that which is not dukkha. There's only one thing that's not dukkha, only one unconditioned element, the unconditioned dhatu. That's nibbana. Nibbana is the unconditioned element. Everything else is conditioned by subjectivity. It's all impermanent, dependently arisen, conditioned, subject to destruction and fading away. It all leads to cessation, except for this one element in the experience of the world. It's our job as humans in this life, fortunate beings who have managed to come across the teaching of a Sammasambuddha. Very rare event. It's rare for Sammasambuddhas to arise in this world. Samma means rightly or fully. Sambuddha means one who has become self-awakened. It's very rare that we get a self-awakening being who can then transmit what they've understood to others and leave a legacy, to leave us with this teaching. We're very lucky and fortunate that 2,500 years later, there have been men and women, mostly monks and nuns, who have managed to preserve this teaching down through the generations. It wasn't as easy as just typing it out on their laptop and putting it on their terabyte. No. Much more difficult than that. They had to use little metal scraping things on palm leaves, meticulously by candlelight. Imagine writing in Pali with a little metal stick on an old palm leaf, trying to preserve this teaching 2,000 years ago. It's incredible what they managed to achieve. It was so important to them at that time. They had such faith after experiencing the truth of the teaching that some people spent their whole lives living as scribes to write this stuff down so that we can access it. We would be negligent not to use this teaching now that we've come across it. Each aggregate needs to be thoroughly inspected. The Buddha says that the past, future and present, internal, external, gross, subtle, inferior, superior, near and far, all those aspects of each aggregate needs to be fully understood. And that's the important thing about the First Noble Truth. It needs to be understood. The Second Noble Truth, which is the cause of suffering, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, the cause of suffering needs to be removed or abandoned. The Third Noble Truth, which is Nibbana, Nirodha, cessation, that needs to be realized. The Fourth Noble Truth, the path that leads to the cessation of dukkha, the Noble Eightfold Path, that needs to be developed. These Four Noble Truths need to be understood, abandoned, realized, and developed. The Buddha tells us that the five aggregates tend to affliction, and they cannot be made to conform to our desires. It's one of the insights that we come across in our meditation practice. All our lives we've been thinking that we're pretty much under control of my mind and body. I kind of want to go here, I go here. If I want to go there, I do this or that. If I want to think like this or that. It becomes pretty clear in the present moment when we're observing that the whole thing is completely out of control. There's nobody to whom it's happening, and there's nobody who can stop the karma from unfolding. It's a purely conditioned process with reactions thrown in for good measure. It gives the delusion that we're in control of things, but in fact, it's completely out of control. The Buddha tells us that attachment to the five aggregates leads to stress, sorrow and depression, and that the change in the five aggregates leads to fear, anxiety and distress. Don't hold on to the five aggregates. All kinds of trouble will come your way. The aggregates are impermanent, and they never fulfill our hopes of safety and security. We think that externally or even internally these five aggregates are, at least I've got my body and mind. Actually, there's no safety or security there at all. There's no refuge in the five aggregates. That's why we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. We go for refuge each morning. And whilst the five aggregates do give pleasure and joy, they must and do change. They do pass away. Their instability is a danger. If you're holding on to something, hoping that you're going to be able to keep it forever and it passes away, what happens when you lose it? What happens when it passes away? What happens when it changes? If you're intoxicated by the attractiveness of your own body, what happens when it starts to change? It starts to age, starts to get older. We call it aging. It's a very polite way of saying things. It's actually decaying. Yeah, the body's decaying. Have a look at your fingernails as you get older. Have a look at your toenails and your teeth. Decay, the skin loses its subtlety. Starts to get a few wrinkles here and there around the face. Yeah, it's decaying. It's decaying before your very eyes. When you're in your 20s, you think, wow, I've got the whole life ahead of me. You can't even imagine what it would be like to be in your 40s. Oh, that must be old. You're in your 40s before you even know it. You're halfway through. Where did that go? And you know that the 60s are just around the corner. You better get practicing. There's work to be done. We habitually assume that we're in control of them, but in fact, we're perpetually being devoured. We're the hapless victim. Our selfhood, our sense of self, our sense of individuality, our personality, is actually the victim of craving. We've become the slave of craving. It's a very unfortunate outcome that we've come to believe this lie, this illusion, this very persistent and continuous illusion. These five aggregates are affected by craving and clinging. We need to abandon delight and lust for these five aggregates. The reason that we take them personally is because there's delight in there. And we'll look at that tomorrow. Because of delight and lust, because of some enjoyment, being is kind of tasty. Becoming somebody is a kind of flavoursome experience. I am. There's delight there. Nandi raga. Yeah. We're beings bound up with delight and lust. Nandi raga sahagata. Constantly appropriating the five aggregates, grasping them with desire and lust, trying to enjoy them, taking them as me and mine. It's delusion. If we're not appropriating them as me and mine, then we're identifying them as I am. Identifying them and the conceit, I'm better than others, I'm worse than others, I'm equal to others. This is myself is expressive of wrong view or self-views. The primary self-view that the five aggregates lends itself to is known as Sakkaya Ditthi. Sakkaya Ditthi, Sakkaya means identity or personality or individuality. That's the view that arises. That's what we call the defiled state when the five aggregates are affected by clinging. We say that they've come to an identity view. It's a false view, but a very persistent and continuous view that arises. When we awaken to the Buddha's teaching, when we come to really penetrate the Four Noble Truths and see things as they really are, this is the first thing that gets uprooted. Sakkaya Ditthi. We need to remove this identity view. That's the first path of freedom, the path of stream entry. We enter the stream that flows all the way to full awakening and full enlightenment. As we gradually remove defiled states of greed and aversion and conceit and ignorance and all kinds of false views and ideas of being. This Sakkaya Ditthi arises in 20 ways by taking the five aggregates in 4 wrong ways. Sakkaya Ditthi presents itself or manifests in every single moment of contact if we're not noting and knowing. If we're not present, if we're not using wisdom to neutralize that object so it can't be a base of me and mine, if we're not turning our present moment experience into a foundation of mindfulness, a satipatthana, then we're entering into a subjectified zone, and sakkaya ditthi, identity view, is arising. We either identify directly with the aggregate itself. We take the body as a self, for example. Or we think that we possess the aggregate. The self is possessing the body. Or we think that we contain the aggregate. The body is in the self. Or the opposite, the self is in the body. In these four ways, and the Buddha phrases it like this, and he regards material form as self, as material form as possessed of self, material form as in self, or self as in material form. And the same with feelings, with perceptions, with thoughts, and with consciousness. He regards consciousness as self. He regards consciousness as possessed of self. He regards consciousness as in the self. Or he regards the self as in consciousness. In these four ways, we misperceive, misappropriate the present moment experience. If we live with ignorance and craving, this is what happens. We end up with the five aggregates affected by clinging. Dukkha is our companion. If, however, we can see things clearly in the present moment, we won't take the five aggregates, any one of them, in these four ways. In that way we can free ourselves. When sakkaya ditthi is arising, when we're taking things as mine, when we're taking things as a self or possessed of self or in self or as self, then we start to reflect unwisely. And this is where the momentary nature of identity view starts to crystallize, starts to become solid. It's when the momentary frames turn into a fast-flowing movie through the projector, and a story starts to occur. The story of my life, my experiences. We start to take the whole thing seriously. We start to take it as my life. We attend unwisely, and it starts to think about itself. It loves to think about itself, doesn't it? Did you ever have a moment where it's not thinking about itself? Maybe if you're very mindful. Otherwise, it's just completely and totally obsessed throughout the day and throughout the night. You're always part of the picture. There's always some subjectivity. There's always a duality that's occurring in your experience. It's rare that we experience the non-dual state. It can sometimes happen. Some people have unique and wonderful experiences. Sometimes it happens when you're in nature, when you've been alone in the forest for a while, and you're really with nature, you can have that experience of descent into voidness. Very strong traumas can produce that experience as well. Some temporary drug experiences can also give you this state of non-duality. It's a temporary one though. It doesn't last for long, and the sense of self always comes back into the experience. When we attend unwisely after the infection of identity view, we start to not only think about ourselves in the present, but we go into the past. It starts to ask questions related to the self. It asks questions, Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what did I become? It starts to create a narrative, and it goes into the future. Shall I be in the future? Shall I not be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? Having been what will I become? And so this concept of time arises. Craving is not just satisfied with being alive in the present. It wants to extend 3 periods of time. It wants to be in the past as well. It wants to be in the future as well. It wants to totally dominate every moment and conception of your reality. Or else it's just inwardly perplexed about the present. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? These are the questions that a deluded Five Aggregates ask themselves. These are the questions that we spend much time with. These are the questions that give us a lot of dukkha. Most of us spend our time thinking, what am I going to be? It's a lot of pain in that question. What am I going to become? It starts when we're younger. When our auntie asks us, what are you going to be when you grow up? You have to start thinking, what am I going to be? Truck driver, fireman, a doctor. And then through our education system, this is drilled into us. You have to be something. You have to become something. And so we're always thinking, what am I going to be? If you're lucky enough to have a family that has some business or something, then you don't have to worry too much about this question. I'm just going to be the shoemaker's son. Great. But if you don't, then you have to think, what am I going to be? What am I going to be? And it just doesn't stop, does it? You go through university, well, I better be this or that. I better go and study those subjects, then I can be that. And you do a lot of study and you finish your thing, and then you realize, I don't want to be that. I want to be something else. And then we start on the search to be something funky. Want to find just the perfect amount of art and business and spirituality. Find the coolest little identity card that you can show others. What are you? Oh, well, actually, we like to have an identity. Makes us feel confident. When we don't have one, always searching. What am I going to be? What am I going to be? What am I going to be when I grow up? You ask it in your 20s, you ask it in your 30s. You'll ask it in your 50s and 60s as well. What am I going to be when I grow up? It just doesn't stop. It just wants to be. It doesn't care what it's going to be. Just as long as it's cool, then it's okay. You don't want to be something boring, do you? Avoid that. Being, the nature of being. When we attend to things unwisely in this way, this sense of self of mine, these kinds of views arise, this sense of self of mine that speaks and feels and experiences the here and there, the result of good and bad intentions. But this self of mine is permanent, everlasting and eternal, not subject to change, and will endure for as long as eternity. Now that's some wrong view for you. The Buddha called it a speculative view. He says, because this is a thicket of views, a wilderness of views, a contortion of views, a facilitation of views, a fetter of views. Fettered by this fetter of views, the untaught, ordinary person is not freed from birth, aging and death, not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, is not freed from suffering, I say. Because of not paying attention in the present moment and seeing things as they really are, this view of self arises. This identity view lays down deep roots, causes a lot of trouble. The stronger your sense of self, the more suffering you're going to have. Try to shake some of it off. Try to feel free and at ease. Don't take it so personally. Don't take it seriously. When you do, suffering. When you start to let it go, you'll feel a kind of lightness. You don't have to carry around a 40-kilo backpack with you. Throw some of the stuff out. 7 kilos is fine. You can travel around with that very comfortably. Well, it's best to totally discard the backpack, but throw things out piece by piece. So this identity view, along with doubt and silabbata paramasa, or the belief in various rites and rituals, this is the leash that binds us to samsara. It's the leash that keeps ensuring that the mind and matter and consciousness process continue to arise and become a person, continue to be born. Birth is always something that relates to a person. Sickness is a person. Death is for a person. If there's no person, if there's no identity view, then there's no birth. There's nobody who was born in the past. There's no death. There's nobody who will die in the future. There's nobody there at all. These are concepts that relate to a sense of self, concepts that relate to a person. When the Buddha describes the end of suffering, he says it's the end of birth, old age, sickness and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair. These are all concepts that relate to a person, relate to a me or a mine or an I. When we've removed those concepts, when we've removed that sense of self, these concepts no longer apply. They have ceased. They have gone to cessation, nirodha. When they cease, we here and now taste the deathless element. We have a taste of the five aggregates unaffected by clinging. In our meditation practice, you can start to get little glimpses and tastes of this experience, just flashes. Sometimes it lasts a little bit longer. It's not the real nibbana, but it's like looking through the keyhole into the room. You start to experience what it could possibly be like to have five aggregates which have not gone to sakkaya ditthi, which have not gone to identity view. There's a freedom there. There's a spaciousness there. There's a connection with all beings. There's a oneness. And there's a bliss. There's a beauty. There's compassion. There's love. That's all that's left. When the sense of self disappears, there's just love, just arising. So the heart of our Vipassana practice is understanding things and seeing the 6 sense bases and the 5 aggregates as impermanent. We see them as arising and passing away. We understand the satisfaction and the danger that they present. And we see the escape beyond, the incessant rise and fall. The 5 aggregates truly are a burden. truly are a misery that we have to behold. And yet there's such a lump of foam. There's no solidity in it at all. When you pick up some foam or some bubbles, it's gone. It appears to be something, but upon examination, there's actually nothing there. Just some residue left on your fingers. Our liberation comes from contemplating the rise and the fall of the aggregates. Venerable Sir, how does one know? How does one see? So that in regard to this body and its consciousness and all the external signs, there is no I-making, mind-making, no underlying tendency to conceit, I am. Well, monk, any kind of material form, any kind of feeling, any kind of perceptions, any kind of thoughts, any kind of consciousness, whatever, whether it be past, future or present, whether it be internal or external, whether it's gross or subtle, whether that's inferior or superior, whether it's near or far, one sees all of these five aggregates as it actually is with proper wisdom. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one knows and sees thus, he becomes disenchanted with the five aggregates. Becoming disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. And through dispassion, he is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. May it be so for all of you.